literally strap in, people. If this Russian invasion of Ukraine has taught us anything, it's that we are not ready to move off of fossil fuels. We absolutely need to increase production in the United States, and Europe needs to increase production. They're at historic lows over the past several decades. As much as we want to kick and scream and say solar, wind are enough, let's move on, we've solved the problem, they aren't enough. And in the interim, we need to absolutely increase production. I'm a big fan of renewables, big fan of nuclear, big fan of fusion. Excited to see what can happen there. We got to face the reality of the fact that energy independence and keeping the lights on and not giving billions of dollars to countries that do evil, that's a super high priority, and we need to balance that with the warming of the planet. So it ain't going anywhere. So we're going to talk about a couple Economist pieces. One from 2003 and one from today, talking about they declared, the oil age is over, and 18 years later they have a piece that says it ain't going anywhere. So we're going to dive into that. Click through to listen to the rest of the episode. Let's dive in. Damn, that was a one-take intro. I'm on a time crunch. We got 13 minutes here, so we're just going to rip this. So as I said, we're going to dive in here to an old Economist article. I'm a big fan of the Economist. Talk about it on here. Read their articles all the time. And let's just dive in. This is from their October 25th, 2003 edition. It's entitled "The End of the Oil Age: Ways to Break the Tyranny of Oil Are Coming into View. Governments Need to Promote Them." The Stone Age did not end for lack of stone, and the oil age will end long before the world runs out of oil. This intriguing prediction is often heard in energy circles these days. If Greens were the only people to be expressing such thoughts, the notion would be dismissed as utopian. However, the quotation is from Sheikh Zaki Yamani, a Saudi Arabian who served as his country's oil minister 3 decades ago. His words are rich in irony. Sheikh Yamani first came to the world's attention during the Arab oil embargo of the United States, which began 3 decades ago this week, and whose effects altered the course of modern economic and political history. Coming from such a source, the prediction, one assumes, can hardly be a case of wishful thinking. Yet a generation after the embargo began, the facts seem plain. The world remains addicted to Middle Eastern oil. So why is Sheikh Yamani predicting the end of the oil age? Because he believes that something fundamental has shifted since that first oil shock, and sadly for countries like Saudi Arabia, he is quite right. Finally, advances in technology are beginning to offer a way for economies, especially those of the developed world, to diversify their supplies of energy and reduce their demand for petroleum, thus loosening the grip of oil in the countries that produce it. This is written in 2003. You could see an article like this today, and it would be like, yeah, that makes sense. And mind you, this was 17 years ago. We were saying the same shit. Hydrogen fuel cells and other ways of storing and distributing energy are no longer a distant dream, but a foreseeable reality. Switching to these new methods will not be easy or all that cheap, especially in transport. But with the right policies, it can be made both possible and economically advantageous. Unfortunately, many of the rich world's governments, and above all the government of America, the world's biggest oil consumer, are reluctant to adopt the measures that would speed the day when the Saudis' worst fears come true. It's interesting because now the U.S. is the biggest oil producer in the world. They took that in 2019. I bet a lot of people would have predicted that in this article, and the main reason for that is fracking. New technologies have been invented, and oil. It's important to understand that oil super majors, oil production in the United States, American oil companies are the best in the business. It's not even close. Many of the Russian oil projects that have now been shut down because Western companies are leaving. That's American ingenuity right there. China doesn't even know how to do any of this stuff. So it's very interesting to think about. I bet the Economist wouldn't have predicted that the U.S. became the biggest oil producer in the world. The $7 trillion heist. Let's go on. If treating the West addiction to oil will be costly, is it really worth doing? To be sure, petro-addiction imposes mighty costs of its own. First, there's the political risk of relying on the organization. Notice that climate change has not come up yet. This is 2003. Interesting. Has not even come up yet. I love reading old shit. This is why it's interesting. First, there's the political risk of relying on the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC. Oil still has near monopoly hold on transport. If the supply is cut off even for a few days, modern economies come to a halt, as Britain discovered when tax protesters blockaded some domestic oil depots 2 years ago. And despite what sounds like large investments in new oil fields in Russia and elsewhere, Saudi Arabia's share of the world oil market will actually grow over the next 2 decades simply because it has such a huge reserves of cheap oil. Geology has granted 2/3 of the world's proven oil reserves to Saudi Arabia and 4 of its neighbors. Because of this continuing concentration of supply, the risk of disruption to oil flows will continue to be a threat and may even rise. That points to a second sort of cost. According to one American government estimate, OPEC has managed to transfer a staggering $7 trillion in wealth from American consumers to producers over the past 3 decades by keeping the oil price above its true market clearing level. That estimate does not include all manner of subsidies doled out to fossil fuel industry, ranging from cheap access to oil on government land to the ongoing American military presence in the Middle East. So OPEC, Organization for Petroleum Exporting Countries, it's a cartel, basically. They control the price of oil. Russia's not part of it. A bunch of Middle Eastern countries are, and I think some others. They control supply and thus control the price. So they'll agree to withhold supply to increase the price. They do it all the time. It's literally a racket. Spits in the face of the free market. The only long-term solution to this connected set of problems is to reduce the world's reliance on oil. Achieving this one, again, no even talk of climate change. This is no 3. Achieving this once seen pie in the sky. No longer. Hydrogen fuel cells are at last becoming a viable alternative. These are big batteries that run cleanly for as long as hydrogen is supplied, which might power anything in or around your home, notably your car. Hydrogen is a fuel that, like electricity, can be made from a variety of sources. Fossil fuels such as coal, natural gas, renewables, even nuclear power. Every big car maker now has a fuel cell program, and every big oil firm is busy investigating how best to feed these new cars their hydrogen. And it's looking like right now, EV electric vehicles, hydrogen is not taking off like they thought it was here. We're just using batteries. Regular, not regular, but not hydrogen batteries. Another alternative likely to become available in a few years is bioethanol. Many cars, quite a few of them in America, already run on a mixture of petrol and ethanol. You've seen that at the gas station, 10% ethanol. The problem here is cost. At the moment, the ethanol has to be heavily subsidized, but this might alter when biotechnology delivers new enzymes that can make ethanol efficiently from just about any sort of plant material. Then the only limit will be how much plant material is available, all in good time. Such change will not occur overnight. It will take a decade or two before either fuel cells or bioethanol make a significant dent in the oil economy. They really haven't yet. Still, they represent the first serious challenges to petrol in a century. If hydrogen were made from renewable energy, or if the carbon dioxide generated by making it from fossil fuels were sequestered underground, then the cars and power plants of the future would release no local pollution or greenhouse gases. First mention of greenhouse gases. Because bioethanol is made from plants, it merely borrows its carbon from the atmosphere, so cannot add to global warming. What is more, because hydrogen can be made in geographically distributed fashion by any producer anywhere, no OPEC cartel or would-be successor to it could ever manipulate the supplies of the price. There never would be another war over energy. It all sounds very fine. What then is the best way to speed things up? Unfortunately, not through the approach currently advocated by President George Bush and America's Congress, which this week has been haggling over a new energy bill. America's leaders are still concerning themselves almost exclusively with increasing the supply of oil rather than with curbing the demand for it while increasing the supply of alternatives. Some encouragement for new technologies is proposed, but it will have little effect. Bigger subsidies for research are unlikely to spur innovation in industries with hundreds of billions of dollars in fossil fuel assets. So this turned out to be, there's been a ton of innovation over the past couple decades. The best way to curb the demand for oil and promote innovation in oil alternatives is to sell the world's energy markets that the externalities of oil consumption, security considerations, and environmental issues alike really will influence policy from now on. And the way to do that is to impose a gradually rising gasoline tax. By introducing a small but steadily rising tax on petrol, America would do far more to encourage innovation and improve energy security than all the drilling in Alaska's wilderness. Crucially, this need not be and should not be a matter of raising taxes in the aggregate. The proceeds of the gasoline tax ought to be used to finance cuts in other taxes. This surely is the way to present them to a skeptical electorate. Judging by the debate going on in Washington, a policy of this kind is a distant prospect. This is a great shame. Still, the pace of innovation already underway means the Sheikh Yamani's erstwhile colleagues in the oil cartel might themselves be wise to invest in some of their money in the alternatives. One day, these new energy technologies will toss the OPEC cartel in the dustbin of history. It cannot happen soon enough. Yeah, that was 17 years ago. 19. Okay, let's go read the other article. And I only got 6 minutes here before I got to finish this thing up, so we'll be quick here. Also, it's important to understand the energy tackling climate change is bigger than just energy production. I think we think of cars and turning the lights on. There's the way we grow food. That's one example. The way we ship things, the way we heat, and the way we build buildings. Those are the other four things that, that huge parts. Even if all our vehicles were electric, we're still in the middle of the Fukin desert. We still got a lot of Fukin work to do. And the bad thing about solar and wind is if the wind ain't blowing or the sun ain't shining, you're not going to get energy. I say that line all the time on here. That's what people don't understand. They're not enough. And storage capacity is just not enough. It's just not enough. The tech just isn't there. That's why I'm a big fan of nuclear. I think we need to invest more in that. Big fan of fusion. Very curious about that. There's a company called Helion, which seems to be the leader in the space for actually commercializing this. So we'll see where that goes. Okay, so now let's fast forward from 2003 to 2022. Why energy insecurity is here to stay. The war will speed the shift from petrostates to new electrostates. Energy and commodities lie at the dark heart of Vladimir Putin's regime and the threat it poses to the world. $4 trillion of oil and gas exports over the 2 decades of his rule have paid for the tanks, guns, and Grad missiles now killing Ukrainians. Also, this has been something a lot of people have been saying this, but now it's clearly in our face. Russia's been doing a lot of fucked up shit for years. I mean, the Middle East, Saudi Arabia specifically, they murdered, I think that Turkish journalist. They've been doing a lot of fucked up shit. The whole time I'm like, God, we're just giving money to evil people, evil regimes. Like, screw the climate change thing. You really want to give these people money, which is power? Like, come on, let's move off the butt. That's why people just want what's easy. They want what's cheap, and oil is fucking cheap, and it works. And that's why I'm very interested in technologies that not only beat incumbents at their own game, but offer a better experience and more cheaply. That's the way to really do it. Make it make economic and sense for the consumer. Make it the logical thing to do. So natural resource earnings have entrenched a rent-seeking elite that has created an offshore archipelago of yachts, nightclubs, and Caribbean front companies. Stifled representative politics and indulged Mr. Putin's megalomaniacal fantasies. That's important. You don't have to invest in your people if you can just take oil out of the ground. And who is helping Russia get that oil out of the ground? Shell, BP. I think there's some other companies working there, but it wasn't just the Russians doing it themselves. We were aiding and abetting. The Western world was aiding and abetting. As Russia supplies 10 to 25% of the world's oil, gas, and coal exports, many countries, especially in Europe, are vulnerable to coercion by it. During this time, and Russia's been doing fucked up shit. Yeah, they've done some sanctions against them starting in 2014 when they annexed the Crimea. Europe's fucking addiction to fossil fuels has not gone down, but their production has absolutely cratered, which is crazy. It's like, bro, you ain't doing a good thing if you're just shifting where you're getting your stuff from at home. You're just taking it from an evil empire. They're not an empire. They're a failing state, but call it what it is. Okay, weeks of chaos in energy markets are beginning to hurt consumers. Petrol prices in Los Angeles are over $6 a gallon for the first time. You can see right behind me, $6 down right over the back of my shoulder here. As sanctions on Russia bite, traders predict Europe will run short of diesel. Germany is preparing to ration natural gas next winter in case Russia cuts off supplies. In Asia, oil importers are bracing for a balance of payments hit. In a tight market, shocks are hard to absorb. Oil spiked at $120 a barrel this week after a pipeline from Central Asia. Shout out Tommy O Beast Mode. I made a $100 bet with this guy and lost it. Oil wouldn't go over $100. I made it like 10 months ago. I couldn't have predicted this, but I was like, Beaster, we'll be fine, relax. And then had to Venmo him that. The immediate reaction of governments everywhere has been to scramble to find more fossil fuels. However, polluting the environment to the environment or painful to their pride. With Western encouragement, Saudi Aramco, the world's biggest oil firm, is raising investment to $40 to $50 billion a year. At one point, the Biden administration buttered up Nicolas Maduro, Venezuela's dictator, perhaps to get more oil from a state in which 2005 supplied 4% of the world's crude. Hello, darkness. Okay, we got to wrap this up. I got to just skip to the end here, unfortunately, because I got to literally get this out. Yet, even as markets respond, governments must also redouble their efforts because self-sufficiency is rarely an option. Diversification is the goal. That means new partnerships. On March 20th, Germany began talks with Qatar for gas. The invigoration of the rich world's nuclear industry is key, not least because it frees everyone else from relying on Chinese and Russian technology. Governments must catalyze mining investment. Firms should not be free to blow up sacred caves or endanger workers, but the transition requires more mining projects in high-risk countries at a cost to the local ecology. Governance rules in wealthy countries need to acknowledge the trade-off. Finally, rich world governments should help electrostates prepare by, for example, helping design model contracts for a fair split of revenues and establishing sovereign wealth funds to save the bounty. Building a cleaner and safer energy system is an epic, risky, and daunting task, but whenever resolve flags, ask yourself, would you rather rely on Mr. Putin's Russia? Absolutely. I mean, we have to do 2 things at once. We have to increase oil production in the interim because that's the way our infrastructure is set up to supply energy right now. And in the long term, in the immediate term, we have to invest in renewables and find viable solutions. I'm very interested in carbon tax. I think a lot of bipartisan economists have signed on to that famously in the Wall Street Journal a few years ago. That was fucking epic. Big fan of that. It's a tough problem, but listen, we can't just say, wind and solar are enough and then we're good. Like I said, there's a bunch of problems in this space. Bill Gates, How to Avoid a Climate Disaster, has a great book on this. Big fan of it, how he lays it out. It's much more than just filling up gas in your car. There's a huge issue. Growing food, very carbon intensive. Making concrete, very carbon greenhouse emitting intensive. A lot of issues here. Very interesting. Thanks for listening. This was a quick one. I want to do more quick ones. It's No Grading Podcast. I'm Dick Lucas. Find it wherever podcasts are available, on YouTube, on Twitter, Dixie Lucas, Instagram, Dixie Lucas. You can find it. You know the deal. I'll link to both these articles in the show notes, and thank you so much for joining. Ukraine, right on, keep fighting. The free world stands with you. Zelensky and company, God bless. Keep doing your thing. Okay, thanks everyone.